Good evening, I'm Alan Jackson, and welcome back to Nashville. We're going to begin tonight with one of the three big issues before the country: our safety, our health, and the health of our great nation. Of course, our faith guides us through all of it. The issue I want to tackle is the heavy debt load we have built and that we'll be leaving to our children if we don't fix it. $104,000 for each individual. If you have a family of four, that's $416,000 owed for your family. The collective amount of federal debt is over $36 trillion. Write down 36 and then add 12 zeros. That'll show you 36 trillion. Well, in 2005, our debt to GDP was 35%. Last year, that ratio was 98%. That means we're unable to pay off the national credit card at all. And we can't afford to look the other way any longer, because that debt will be 20% above the GDP in another 10 years if we don't do anything. Both parties have contributed to the debt, so both parties are going to be needed to solve it, whether they like it or not. But there is finally some very encouraging news. Finally, someone is doing something about this debt. A successful businessman, President Trump, knows what too much debt can do to suck the life out of any business, and certainly our national economy. And he seems determined to fix it. Well, fortunately for us, we have one of the experts who's advised him for years, the Heritage Foundation economist, Steve Moore. Welcome back, Steve.
Alan, great to be with you. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, let's start with the higher level view. Most of us hope to leave our children with some type of an inheritance. But I certainly don't know anyone who goes around boasting that I left my kids a $100,000 credit card debt. But right now, only one party's tackling the debt and only one party's trying to stop that. What do you think's going on?
Well, I'm not so sure either party's really trying to stop the debt, frankly. I mean, as you said earlier, this is the result of overspending by both parties. Politicians love to play Santa Claus, and they love to spend as much money as they can get their hands on. When I arrived in Washington in 1983-84, where our national debt was $1 trillion, and as you just said, it's now $36 trillion. This is a disgrace. It's a national emergency. It's going to bankrupt our country, and we need to turn it around. And we need to turn it around by doing two things. First, most importantly, we have to grow our economy faster to produce more tax revenues. When more people are working and businesses are more profitable, that's very good for lowering the debt. The other thing we have to do is a full-scale audit of our agencies and government. We have thousands of agencies. Most people have no idea what they do. We're learning from Doge that they waste incredible amounts of money, and that can't stand. We have to have a lean and efficient government, and we don't have either of those right now.
Well, for a long time, we've heard it's the economy, stupid. But I don't know if people just vote on cheaper gas and eggs, or do they take into account the out-of-control national debt?
Well, that's right. And, one of the big problems is that the fastest growing area of our budget right now is interest payments on the debt. So that is, you were paying taxes not for government services, but for past borrowing, and we're paying roughly, are you ready for this, $1 trillion a year just in interest payments. So, that's about, one quarter of the country is just paying their taxes to pay for the interest. Well, that's like a dog chasing its tail. You're never going to get out of debt when your debt service payments keep growing and growing and growing. And every household knows that, every business knows it. Unfortunately, the politicians in Washington haven't. Now, I will give Donald Trump a lot of credit. He's out of the gate saying we're going to get rid of a lot of this waste, the inefficiency, the duplication, the fraud, which is abundant in Washington. And, but of course, the swamp is fighting back against Trump. They don't want to see these cuts.
Well, the national debt seems like a distant problem. It's not something that touches an individual family or any specific day. Tell us what you say to individuals about how it genuinely can and does affect their lives.
Well, first of all, no great nation that cares about its kids and grandkids, as we all do, at least we supposedly do, would leave this kind of debt to their kids. We've always, as a nation, the American dream is to leave your country better off. And we're now in a situation with all this debt and all this overspending, we may leave the nation worse off. Now, look, we have a lot of assets too. We have $140 trillion of assets. So the debt is still a fairly small, percentage of our assets. But when I see how the money is being spent, the millions and billions that are going for things like, you see, there was an article the other day, $9 million a year going to newspaper subscriptions to left-wing magazines. I mean, come on. I know it's only $9 million, but that's a lot of money.
Yeah. Some Democrats are protesting and storming some of the departments that are being cut. Witness this scene. It's a gang up for the cameras.
We are not allowed in the building to talk to them. We are not allowed to advocate on behalf of America's children. America, we have a problem.
Now, everybody stand back and let the camera see. They're calling all of these gun-loading people out on us. They're calling them out on us. Look behind this door. Who do you see back there?
The doors will open.
Do they have guns on them? Do they have guns?
Any weapons.
Are they prepared to shoot us?
Why are the Democrats so unhinged?
Because they are terrified that we're going to find out how the money is actually being spent. And that's why what Elon Musk is doing is so valuable. He is looking under the hood. And, you know, when you threaten to look at how the government is spending money, it's like putting a, cross in front of a vampire. They hate that idea. And you're seeing the swamp creatures of Washington complaining that for the first time in 40 years, we actually have people looking at where your tax dollars are spent. And I hope people are angry about it, because it's absolutely disgusting how much money is being wasted in Washington for projects that have no bearing on the lives of American people. The fact that, you only have 20% of federal workers showing up for work on time and, 40 hours a week, and we're paying them $150,000 to $200,000 a year. That's a pretty sweet deal. And now they're complaining they have to go back to work.
When we come back, there's much more to talk about with Steve Moore. You can jump in on this conversation with an email for his next visit. Send them to comments at alanjacksonnow.com. We're back now with Steve Moore, longtime advisor to the president and the chief economist at Heritage, and the author of The Trump Economic Miracle. Well, you know him really well, Steve. Why do you think President Trump is so passionate about cutting waste?
Because he's a great businessman. That's what's unique about Donald Trump as president, that he understands how business works. He knows that no business would ever operate the way our government does in terms of spending massive amounts of money we don't have and throwing it down. Look at the tens of billions of dollars we're spending on foreign aid, and none of the money actually gets to the people who it's supposed to help. You look at these agencies. The Department of Education is another good example. Since Jimmy Carter created this agency, we spent $1 trillion at the federal level on our schools and on the Department of Education. And yet over that period, Ellen, the test scores keep dropping. So somebody show me how that money is having any positive effect. If anything, it's having a negative effect. I could go on with these programs that simply do not deliver what they're supposed to. And we either ought to reform them, shrink them, or better yet, just cancel them and get rid of things that don't work. And that's something that very rarely happens in Washington. As Reagan used to say, the closest thing to immortality on this earth is a federal government program. And that certainly is true with respect to what's going on now in Washington.
Well, one of the president's more controversial ideas has been a plan to integrate Greenland in our orbit. Now, there's a national security interest in that, and there's some serious economic benefits that could help the U.S. and Greenland. Listen to his argument.
We need this for national security. We need Greenland very badly. You look at the Russian ships, the China ships, they're all over the place. They're, surrounding. Now, they have for a long time. That's a lane. But we need that for national security. So I don't know that Denmark has any right, title, and interest, and we're going to find that. But I can tell you, you saw the clips that were released. The people of Greenland would love to become a state of the United States of America.
Well, it's the largest island in the world, but only 56,000 people live there. How do you suggest the president could pull this off?
Well, listen, people forget that for the first 120 years of our country, all we did was acquire land. You remember the Louisiana Purchase, where we purchased so many of the southwestern states. We acquired Florida, the state I'm in right now, from Spain. We acquired Alaska. We acquired Hawaii. We acquired Oregon. All of these states were through purchases and acquisitions. And, Greenland, as you said, only has 60,000 people, but it has bountiful resources. It's important for national security. So I think it's a great idea, and I hope President Trump can can pull it off, and that would be good for our economy. They probably have, think about, by the way, Alaska, when it was purchased, you know what the price tag was for Alaska?
No.
We paid $8 million for Alaska. we probably get $8 million of oil from Alaska every day. So it was these purchases have turned out to be good for the people in these lands, but also for the American people.
Well, and for the record, I don't personally remember the Louisiana Purchase. I got one more question. There's another idea, Mr. Trump, that's come out, it seems to come out of nowhere, and that was getting back control of the Panama Canal. We built it, but the ports on each end are run by a Hong Kong company that's entirely in the hands of Xi Jinping. Now, he's in his 12th year as the Chinese ruler there. Tell me what the potential is with the canal if we don't get back some control over it.
Well, I don't know if we have to take back control of it, but we certainly have to make sure that China and our enemies don't have, better access to a canal that we built, we financed, it was American know-how, than countries like China that had nothing to do with the canal. So I think Trump is going, I don't think we're going to take over control of the canal, but I think we're going to force Panama to treat us as we should be, as the original agreement was. They're out of the agreement. They're the ones who have reneged on that agreement, and I think Trump is going to make it right so that American ships have first access to that canal that we built. Alan, it's always so great to be with you. I always learn so much from your show, and I hope I can come on again sometime soon.
We'll look forward to that. You're in a key role, and we want to have you back to keep us up to speed.
Thank you.
Well, in a moment, some thoughts of my own, what we can do collectively. I'll be right back. A lot of changes happening, positive change in my opinion, under our new administration. Simultaneously in this season of change, there's also a lot of competing voices, unrelenting and loud in their opposition, hostile towards financial accountability within our government. Well, I want to remind you, the government doesn't actually have money. They just have our money, we the taxpayers' money. One of the arenas that has been under scrutiny lately has been the Department of Education. I think a bit of history can help us. The Department of Education is a cabinet-level department founded by President Jimmy Carter in 1980. I suspect the average American thinks it started in 1776. It didn't. It's a relatively new arrival. The expressed goal was to close the gap in the education of our children, so that the gap between the lower performing students and the higher performing students could be eliminated. Well, they've been crazy successful. Now everybody's performing at a lower standard. I suspect you heard the president of one of the teachers' unions arguing recently without shame in a public, very forcefully, that the teachers' union should have more authority over the education of our children than their parents do. Well, the awkward reality is that education must be reimagined. It's not working. Our schools are less safe, they're less effective. Our universities have become fertile grounds for a worldview that's opposed to the Judeo-Christian values that have shaped our nation and our homes. I encourage you today to be a voice of truth. Start in your homes with your family systems. Remind you of a verse of Scripture, Deuteronomy 6 and verse 6. These words that I command you today shall be on your heart. Teach them diligently to your children. Shall talk to them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, when you rise up. Speak up, talk to your kids. Don't leave it up to the education system to shape the minds of our children with a worldview that's opposed to our biblical perspectives. Speak the truth at your workplace, in your sphere of influence. The solution to society's ills, it's not fundamentally political, it's a spiritual challenge. And we as the people of God must find the courage to speak the truth. If we will do that outside the walls of our churches, it's not so difficult in a Sunday school class or a small group. It's more challenging when we're at dinner with friends or in some public setting or sitting in the bleachers watching our children or maybe our grandchildren play a ball game. But it's in those places where we have to use our voice and our opinions, not in anger, not in malice, certainly not violent, but we've got to have the courage to tell the truth. Well, that's my message for tonight. And after a short break, we'll start looking at your messages. We've got emails. Thank you for taking the time to send your emails, your thoughts, opinions, and perspectives. They're an important part of the program. Terry in California emailed, Dear Pastor Jackson, it's great that Trump has declared war on the anti-Christian bias in this country. Why don't we take advantage of this and ask Trump to see what he can do about getting the U.S. Senate to declare the month of November as Persecuted Church History Month? It's an interesting idea, Terry. You know, Christianity is the most persecuted religion in the world today. And one of the groups I find most reluctant to acknowledge that is the Christian community. I was doing an interview and I pointed out that fact. And the interviewer said, well, it's because there's more Christians than anyone else. We shouldn't pay any attention to it. I think we need to use our voices to stand on behalf of those people around the world who are hunted because they identify as followers of Jesus of Nazareth. It's up to us. We have the freedom. Minnie Hawkins emailed, thank you for all you're doing to keep us informed on many levels. I pray that each person who voted for our president will dedicate an equal amount of energy and commitment to praying for him and his entire staff every day, because Satan will be on the job every day. Our prayers will be the tool that shows the Father God that we really want this country to be one nation under God. I pray for President Trump to have the wisdom of Solomon, the tenacity of Moses, the passion of Paul, and the heart after God of King David. Minnie, I really like the way you think, and I am especially impressed with the way you craft your prayers. I couldn't agree more. If we'll spend as much time praying for those who are leading us as we do complaining about what's happening, I believe it'll change our lives, our hearts, and ultimately our nation. And then V from McKinney, Texas, lived there one summer back in the day. He said, I listen to you every morning, twice to be exact. I ordered 5 of the Good News notebooks, 1 for my daughter, granddaughter, 2 for friends, and of course myself. We've decided to share our gratitude, blessings, and prayers answered on New Year's Eve. Thank you so much for this wonderful thought tool. Well, I like your creativity. I have come to the realization that if we will spend more time being grateful, thankful, and expressing appreciation for the blessings in our lives than we do giving voice to our fears and our concerns and our anxieties, not only will we be healthier physically and emotionally, I believe we're far more available for the purposes of God to come forth in our lives. We really have things that can be celebrated, and I like your intentionality with it. I may start sharing some notebooks with some friends as well. Debbie from Virginia writes, I've been watching your sermons on TBN for several years now, and I've been deeply impacted by them. So when your news program began to air, I decided to give it a try. I'd sworn off the mainstream media several years ago because of its leftist leaning. So your program, along with the news programs that precede and follow yours, have been like a breath of fresh air. I feel like I'm being kept informed and I'm finally hearing the truth. I was so impressed with how you called upon Christians to get more involved with the election process. I truly believe your efforts played a part in the election outcome. Well, outcomes are beyond my pay grade. Encouraging Christians to watch, listen, think, and act, that's the lane I'm living in. We've got to pay attention to what's happening in our world, use our voices, and at the beginning and ending of that, we have to choose to yield ourselves to the authority of Scripture. If we will do that and honor God in our lives, in our homes, and in our families, I trust God to direct the outcomes in the world around us. For far too long, I think we've wanted to pursue our own objectives and our own agendas, and we would send people to Washington, D.C. or state capitals and expect them to deal with the problems. We've got to leave that idea behind. We're going to have to pay attention, be engaged, use our voices, and seek the Lord. If we do that, I truly believe we can change our nation and through that, our world. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch the program and use your voice to be an advocate for it. If you missed the live broadcast, every evening now we're posting the program on our YouTube channel. You can find it at the address that's on the screen there. It's easy to share with a friend. The more you watch, like, and subscribe, the greater the opportunity we have to stay on the air and to keep telling the truth and encouraging the people of faith to put God first in their lives. Thanks for your emails. Make sure to send them to comments@alanjacksonnow.com. And from all of us here in Nashville, thank you for joining us tonight and have a wonderful evening.